postponement of the earlier meeting. Unfortunately, many of us, the reason it wasn't a brilliant one at the end of the day, but thank you for that. The other thing, I'd just like to welcome Councillor Hyman as a new member to this committee. Councillor Hyman, have you previously been a member of the Audit Committee, or was this?
Many years ago, yes.
I thought so. So welcome back.
It didn't have any risk at the time. Well, not in the title. It did have the risk, so to speak. Yes, that would have been 2018, probably 2019, maybe.
Hopefully you'll see a few changes, improvements. The other thing, just to in terms of the agenda, we are going to take item 13 just before item 7 because the two are totally related. And likewise, we are going to take items 11 and 14 together again because they are closely related. Members, as you will notice, this meeting is being televised, and I therefore ask you to keep your comments brief and succinct. We've got a long agenda today. I am assuming that everyone has read the papers because lots of detailed reports. So some of those I will take as read with questions that you, of course, can ask of the officers. That said, if the recording ceases, we'll have to pause the meeting until it's soon. With that, before we go into the agenda, I'd just like to ask the officers on screen and in the room here just to identify yourselves so everyone knows who you are, please.
So Helen Barnsley, emergency planning at Guildford and Waverley.
And we so regulatory review advisor in the meeting.
Jo Knight, strategic director of finance and resources, section 151, Guildford and Waverley.
Neil Pittman, head of the Southern Internal Audit Partnership.
Ezra Wallace, strategic director at base.
Jack Adams, principal arboricultural officer, Waverley Borough Council.
Yeah, Kieran Ward, head of information governance and data protection officer for both Guildford and Waverley.
What's the name? Sorry.
Kieran Ward.
Yeah, and on the screen, I see Edward. Is it Edward or Ed?
Ed's fine. I'm a policy officer in strategy and corporate services.
Thank you. Going down, Richard.
Richard Sims, joint corporate health and safety manager.
Thank you. And I think finally, but certainly not least, Deborah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Deborah Davies. I'm the joint head of governance. My apologies, I'm not in the room tonight because the meeting had to be rescheduled.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Just for reference, you are quite quiet, so when it comes to your turn, if you could speak loudly, or we'll shout if we can't hear you.
I will do, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll turn to the agenda. Kimberly, do we have apologies for absence?
We have apologies from Councillor Jerome Davidson, and I'm going to make a presumption that we have apologies from Councillor Connolly.
I think that's a given. Thank you. Item 2 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on 11th of March. I think before we do that, we had a number of outstanding items which were on page 1. First of all, there was the cyber security briefing that was going to be held. I believe that was held. I think Councillor Higgins, you chaired that in my absence.
That's correct. Yeah, no, it's very helpful. Thank
you. There was a item there for recruitment and retention that Garcia was going to update this meeting.
Yes, I did email her, and she said she would try and get to this meeting, but obviously she's not here, so I will ask her if she can give us a...
If she can send something in either an email in the interim, if she can't do that, then I would like her to attend the next meeting. But yes. Frankly, I think when we ask and we give good due notice to an officer to attend this meeting, I think it's respectful to attend, or at least explain why they can't attend. So we don't ask questions lightly. We're conscious it's, your time is busy, so you can please pass that on. Lastly, but probably not least, we had the water safety audit. And Kimberly, thank you. You circulated the update from the landlords advisory board meeting at the end of June. And before we go into the minutes, I know that certain councillors, Councillor Barker Lomax, you certainly raised some questions about that. We have had circulated a response to those. Would you like to?
Just what it is, so they've doubled what they said they'd do, so 70 and they've got 144. Councillor Hannah tells me there's limited risk, but and then you have
You have to see the microphone being a little lower, they can't really behind.
which one?
Hanging from the roof.
Yeah, I mean, progress has been made and I don't know what else to say.
Well, I certainly shared your concern on first read. The report seems to suggest there were now 738 outstanding actions, whereas when the internal audit was done, it was 630. So it seemed like we were going the wrong way rather than the way that we'd hoped. I could understand that there were certain delays, but I also then take some comfort from the officer's email this evening. So I think what I'd like to suggest is that we keep this on the agenda, and that the next report from the landlords advisory body is also shared with this committee, so we get the chance.
So you'll have it
Because I think making sure that what we say and there is assurance over the governance on this is critical. But I am comforted by the comment that the items do not present an emergency risk. I think that's to me is key.
Yeah, agreed.
Mr. Chairman, it's one of the pitfalls or difficulties with the system of categorising risks and putting them in boxes. It is when you have things which are a very high risk for a few people, but no risk at all for other people, and then councillors only see the very high risk bit, then we can tend to overreact. And if the people who are putting together the plans for compliance, let's say, aren't fully aware of the science and the real issues in place, then we can end up wasting an awful lot of people's time and an awful lot of other people's money trying to sort out a risk which actually is quite easy to sort out. I mean, in this case, it's scientifically, it's Legionnaire's disease, Legionella, you get by breathing it in. So it's only a risk if you've got a shower that isn't a power shower. And where the water's been sitting, so that's where you need to focus your attention. Nowhere else at all, really. Right, and what we've got is two teams of very expensive people going around, wasting lots of people's time, wanting to check whether they've got Legionella in their tanks, even and they want access to the tanks, even when the tanks don't need access and can be accessed externally. They want to check people's water tank temperatures, which and people have to take half a day off work for this, or twice or whatever, in order to satisfy this compliance game. When people's water tanks turn on and off twice a day anyway, often, or whatever. So testing the temperature of the water in someone's hot water tank is not going to tell anybody anything at all at that time. It's a snapshot. And they are not actually testing the water itself. They also want to know whether they ought to be changing the tank. Well, if they haven't asked in advance, asked the council to look at its records to see whether or not that person has had a mains water supply power shower fitted in a new bathroom as part of the new bathroom upgrades. Because all of those people are perfectly safe. So, and it's only so what we're doing is using a sledgehammer and spending awful lots of money to crack a tiny little walnut problem. And it comes up to us here as, oh, look, this is something really important we've got to keep on top of. No, let's please just be sensible, think about it a bit, get it done properly, and it can be done for a fraction of the price without inconveniencing absolutely everybody. That's it. We shouldn't have to mention it again.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. I think from this committee's perspective, it was a concern raised about the governance. I don't think any of us would portray ourselves as experts in Legionnaires. That's for the officers.
It's been in our reports
to
and
manage that. However, from I think the previous discussions that this committee had, we were concerned that if there were measures that hadn't been done and there was to be an outbreak, that could have significant repercussions and therefore was a potentially significant risk that needed to be addressed and addressed properly.
It shouldn't have arisen. And you're right, there are governance issues. Yes, but
and that was really the extent for this committee. Other committees may be more involved in the.
At some stage, I mean, the problem is we don't want to be operating in silos, which is the problem where these problems arise from. If we are operating in a silo ourselves and saying, well, we only look at this, that, and the other, then what we learn here in this committee and the decisions we make don't get heard by anybody else. Nobody else learns anything from it, and problems continue. And I've seen this with asbestos, water quality. For 25 years, it's been round and round in circles. It's about time we were to look at it.
I appreciate your comments. This committee, we did liaise with the ONS committee to make sure that we were at least both aware and knowledgeable, and it was for the ONS committee to take forward should they so decide. Many of us are on that committee, so that's something that we could have to revisit. Thank you. We're still only on the minute, so any other questions on the minute? Otherwise,
only the spelling of sprinkles on page 2, so which isn't page 2 of the PDF, it's page 2 of the paper copy.
No, Councillor Bartlett.
Can I check, have we got the answers on the deteriorating fraud figures, and have we had access to the detailed LGR risk register?
That is, I think, going to be addressed when we talk to the on the LGR. Ed, I don't know whether you heard that question. It was a question relating to the LGR risk register
And the fraud figures.
and the
Fraud figures, deteriorating fraud figures. We were told we would get written answers on that.
okay. Can I ask Ed to take that up?
Sorry, I missed that. The deteriorating figures for what? Sorry.
Fraud figures.
Fraud.
Fraud figures. Yeah.
No, that's not necessarily. No, that one.
So how fine. What's the spelling of wrinkles then?
KRINKELELS. This is for German.
Thank you.
Can you please take up the question on the fraud? I don't think that has been addressed.
Yes.
So with that amendment and obviously the note on the water safety, do the councillors agree this is the correct record of that meeting?
Yes.
Thank you. Kimberly, disclosure of interests.
None received prior to the meeting.
Questions by members of the public
None received.
and questions from members.
None received.
So that takes us to item 6, which is the strategic risk register, where we're being asked to note the updated risk registers and make observations on its comments. Ed, I'm going to hand back to you for a very brief introduction of what we have in front of us, and then I'm going to invite members to ask some questions of you. I've already, I think, sent you some questions. You may have had others.
Yeah. No, thank you, Chair. So the reports in front of you include the strategic and operational risk registers for Q4 25-26, which is the period from January to March 26, as well as the Middle East conflicts impacts briefing. The latter provides context and background to the new strategic risk SR13 macroeconomic volatility. The reports are located on pages 7 to 82 of the agenda pack, and substantive changes to the reports have been noted on page 10 of the agenda pack. Please note that the reports have been to the executive on the 7th of July and the SR13 macroeconomic volatility risk was approved. While it's not possible to make any further changes to the reports now, we will take into account any comments or observations that remain relevant to the Q2 report, which is currently being drafted. Responses to questions raised by the chair were also returned by email on the 14th of July. However, if you have any further questions, I'm happy to answer any that I'm able to. And if myself or other officers present are unable to answer them, I will respond with a written response from the relevant team. Thank you.
Thank you. I pass that over to members for any questions. If there none, I will kick off. And these are some of the ones I've given Ed the heads up on. We had the direction on the SR2, which is the local government risk, was downward. I was concerned that with now we're in section 24 direction, but I found it curious that we were downgrading that risk, and it seems to me that that might be a reason for at least maintaining it. Ed, could you just enlighten the remaining members of the committee on where you are and whether that was considered or not in this iteration?
Yeah. So as part of considering the risk, we didn't actually consider section 24. But I took it away and spoke with Luke Harvey, and my understanding is that while it can delay business, we are getting approvals through. We're not seeing any issues as of the moment, but it's something that I'll look to raise when I do my next quarterly meetings to see if there are any issues that need to be flagged on the risk registers to do with section 24.
Thank you. The other question I had was on the SR6, the Governance of Charitable Trusts, which was raised because of overdue account filings.
Yeah.
Joe, and Candice isn't online here, but Joe or Ed, can you comment on whether those filings have been made?
Do you want to take that?
Either of you, Joe, if you could.
So it has been highlighted to the team. Some of them are historical, they have never been particularly good at that. They've got a plan in place to make sure that we are tapped in everything. What I can't do is off the top of my head say that they've been filed. I just need to go and check. So I'll check and come back to you, Chair.
If you can. I appreciate that, then there's a fixed thing, but also just to make sure that there's nothing alarming in them not having been filed yet. But yeah, if you could advise us on that. And lastly, there was the comment I had on the safeguarding report. I think it was a question of the timing. There was the internal audit report on that. And I know that you've given me a summary of that. I haven't yet circulated that report, but Neil, I don't know whether you wish to make any observations on the safeguarding reports or audit that you gave.
Yeah, I must confess, Chair, I haven't got the details of that particular report. I think it concluded with no all reasonable.
That's certainly my understanding that it seems appropriate. I didn't see any particular longer, but I think if we could sorry, you weren't copied in. I'll copy you or on the report. You could just circulate that to members. That would be, I think, reassuring. Members, any other questions on the risk register? Councillor Barkley.
On SR4, so this is NPPF and the new local plan. So the gross risk scoring is 20. And the residual post mitigation is still 20, so it's clearly not having any impact. And I just wondered, for that to be meaningful, should we not be saying, right, there are more mitigating factors that we're going to apply in order to get that down, and just for it to be meaningful? But then the counterpoint to that is that the target is 4, which we're never going to make at that rate. So I guess I'm just sort of kicking the tires on the assumptions behind the numbers.
Yeah. Ed, do you want to make any comment on that? So,
Yeah.
I'll just say that's something we can definitely review on it when I next have my meeting with Claire Upton Brown, and we can see if there'd be a more realistic target for us to move towards. I think it's quite a challenging space, and we're not seeing much movement in terms of bringing the target down at the moment. But I can definitely see if we can find a more realistic target.
But what does residual mean, if I may, Chair? And
oh, sorry, I was just going to say residual is where we are now, and the gross would be where we would be. Usually, it's where we would be if we hadn't put mitigations in place. But I think the reason we're gross here is probably because, despite the mitigations, we're still hitting where it's saying that it's almost certain and significant. Sorry, yeah.
If I may, I can come in. So, Councillor, just check you're referring to housing numbers, housing targets.
Well, it's page 40. It doesn't specifically say housing, but I'm assuming it does because it's the NVDF. So
yeah, I think the key point to make that is that that's not our target; it's the government's target. So we can't do anything to change the target. So I think that's the key point to make. So it's a risk we've got to manage. We can do what we can by bringing forward the new local plan at pace under the new local plan regulations. You've seen the decisions published in that, but ultimately the housing targets are decided by government.
Fine, thank you for that. But can I just check? So then, what does the 20 against residual mean? Does it mean we tried to mitigate and it's had zero effect? Or does it mean we have mitigation plans and we don't think they're going to have any effect?
Do you want to help out with that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so the residual score is where we are now. But yeah, so basically, as of my last meeting, that's the score that we look at. So the residual score is where we were as of that quarter, basically. But I can tease it out in the next meeting to basically say that we are sitting where the gross score is, and have the mitigations brought us further away from where the gross score is effectively. Because what we would want to see is that we would be moving away from the gross score, but obviously we're not at the moment. But that's something I would need to check.
I would certainly think that as things on the plan get ticked off or having done, that the residual would become lower.
Yeah.
Nearer the target. But I can understand why at the moment it's similar, because we haven't got many things ticked off. I also just would hesitate. I think I misunderstood you, but I would be concerned if the risk appetite was being changed in order to, quote, manage a risk and the way it looks. And there's got to be good reasons for changing a risk appetite, rather than to making something look better because you reduce it. Or so
I don't think
that was the implication, but just did that. Good. Any other? Councillor Hyman.
In respect of NPPF and the new local plan SR4, and always have been, when I say always, in 20 years, serious compliance issues, which are extremely high risk issues. It's the evasion of appropriate assessments and evasion of the determination in the ruling of People Over Wind and Sweden in 2018, where the council did accept that it had been acting unlawfully since 2008, and as had other councils, and yet then went back with government Wango's help, Natural England, to do the government's bidding, which is to ignore the law. And we can still, I mean, I can ask you, any single person in this room, do you have an appropriate assessment of the mitigation of the impact on endangered species and habitats? We have in place, courtesy of Natural England, a project of mitigation, and their own data from surveys shows that it's ineffective. So we are selling ineffective mitigation, which some people would call fraud, and should be looked at under fraud by this committee as well. And this has been going on for 16 years. It is a serious issue because, of course, it colours everything that all the councils involved do, because you have to have a regime which is willing to ignore the law and to keep people in the dark all the time. And it has been going on a long time. This is a serious compliance issue. And whenever I raise a matter, I just get, well, we've got a whistleblower policy, but I get punished for raising and I'm punished again.
You certainly have raised this matter previously, and I know that.
And you cannot provide me with an appropriate assessment of the mitigation, when it comes to this mitigation strategy, and nobody else can, but no one will admit it. If I ask you to, put in writing to me, they won't allow you to put into writing to me that you do not have an appropriate assessment, that the council does not have one, despite the fact that your role is to ensure proper governance of this council.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Catherine Fitzgerald. Do you have your hand up? No, it's gone down.
Hi there. Yeah, just to say, in terms of apologies, I was late. I was stuck in the lobby for a while. So I am the Joint Policy, Strategy and Insights Manager. So just to say, in terms of the National Planning Policy Framework, from my understanding, one of the big issues has been the delay to the publishing of the framework. So it was expected like this side of summer, so we should have already had it, but it's been delayed till September. So that's also something that is obviously difficult for us to control. So that was the main thing that I had from discussions from Claire heard. But I think anything else, we can definitely get a bit of an update with her. And in for the Q2 report, as Ed was saying, we can discuss if there's any other mitigating measures that can be put in to help bring that score down. But that was one of the big blockers from what I had understood. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chair. I thought the briefing note on the conflict in the Middle East was an excellent report, and it highlighted certain things that obviously relate to the Middle East conflict, but it had a wider input in terms of things like cost inflation. And one of my concerns in terms of how we have financial protections in place. So, for example, I think we've got good financial protection in place when you're making decisions. Say, for example, as delegated authority been up to £200,000, and that applies when there's tangible costs, so spending on something in particular. I think my concern's always been what happens in terms of a decision that's made that doesn't actually crystallise an immediate impact on cost. So, for example, delaying a capital project by a few months, 6 months, a year. That obviously has inflationary cost increases, typically construction costs and things like that. Are officers, the executive, aware of potential financial impact of delaying projects? Is that actually made clear to them? I suppose in terms of making decisions, say, for example, executive wanted like Cranley Leisure Centre to delay after Christmas. Is a financial impact. Essentially, is there a financial impact decision that we're making?
So I think officers are very aware of the impact of delayed decisions with inflation, especially since before reports come out. We've done a lot of work on where we have delayed decisions, on what the impact of that decision has been made, and where there is a change in the cost, we will report it to members.
Excellent. That's great. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. I certainly agree with you that it was a very comprehensive report. That I perhaps worry that it was a report that wasn't so much a risk, but the effect of risks. And whilst I saw that, if officer time is spent with such detail on reports on every global crisis that we face, we won't get very much done. So I just make that as an observation.
I think I'm glad actually, Chairman, that it has been highlighted and this report has come forwards, because the way that things are playing out in the Middle East could have a game-changing impact over the coming weeks and months on us and how we serve our residents, how this council acts. And I think we should be ready for it. It isn't certain, and as much as nothing is certain except death and taxes. But the taxes bit certainly are going to be it's the costs of energy in this country could change very rapidly if America stops releasing from its reserves of the billions and billions of gallons of oil that it has been doing to keep things steady over the past months. They are unable to continue to do that. And we don't know how that is going to play out in about a fortnight, 3 weeks' time. But you have, over the past couple of days, already seen the price of diesel and petrol rocketing back upwards in response to the news that's come out. And I think, although this predates that, the risks involved here, I think we need as councillors and council officers to be looking at this could be game changing. And when everybody comes back from their summer holidays, if they're lucky enough to have them, then the game will be to see how we can stop spending anything rather than, where we're going to put our money, how we stop spending things, because people will not be able to afford to pay their council tax if we assume we can just keep chucking it at people to pay. And West Surrey, of course, we've got to make sure that West Surrey aren't taking the attitude that everybody can afford to pay more, because ultimately it'll be the taxpayer who has to pay it when people decide, no, I'm not going to bother working in student life. And we're getting to that point for a lot of people. So this is very important for us. And as governments, we need to be on top of governments and making sure our officers are doing the right thing and taking the right attitude if things hit the fan.
Absolutely, having this sort of report will help focus officers' attention on where
I think it's useful, and I'm thankful for it. Yes, it's important. It's not just another of those things. This is a serious risk.
Thank you for that. Hearing no other questions, I'll ask the committee please to note the updated strategic and operational risk registers. I'm conscious, just before we do that, the strategic risk register, the LGR strategic risk register that Councillor Bartholomew referred to earlier, that we'd asked for a copy of that. Is that still being prepared? So, Ed, if you could.
Yeah, sorry, just to say on that, I did check. So the LGR risk register is it's owned by Perry Ashton, and I believe that it's going to another committee, which is the Joint Governance Committee, and I think they were worried that they would be doubling up on work to bring it to both committees. But I can ask them if they would be prepared to bring the LGR risk register to audit and risk, if that's something you do want to see still.
It was a request. Yes, we do want to see that. Conscious that we're focused on the Waverley risk, but it was important for us to make sure that risk register was extant in order to establish and get the assurance that Waverley's governance was worth. So yes, please.
I just looked up my response from Perry, and he did say that he's now finalised and approved the updated monthly programme board, but I'm happy to come to a future meeting on it.
Okay, I will. If he can circulate if members think that it would be useful to have the officer present, but it's more to see established that we are managing that particular governance risk appropriately.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm an idiot. I forgot to bring a glass or find one or water. I can run across to the members.
There's one right here, so you don't have to.
So I was going to offer for David and Neil perhaps because they haven't got cups of things in front of them. Everybody else is meant to bring their own. Do you want a drink? Do you like glass?
Be very kind, I think.
Yeah, David. Yeah, all right. That's 3. Please. Thanks.
Bear with us, please, on the screen while we have what I think they now call a hydration break.
The right time. as well. It's good time
Risks of
Thank you, Kimberly. So members, could we please note the strategic and operational risk registers? Noted.
Yes,
Thank you.
no,
We're now moving to item 7, but before we do that, and I would like to take item 13, which is the local code of corporate governance, in advance, because that in a way frames a lot about the ABS. Specifically. Deborah, are you taking the lead on this?
Yes, I am, Chair.
Thank you. Would you like to present to us item 13?
Thank you. So, members, item 13 is the framework of corporate governance. So what we've done is we've set out what your framework is for corporate governance, and the annual governance statement is actually a review of how you meet the framework. This is the first time we've actually set out a local code of corporate governance, and with the annual governance statement, they have different but complementary roles, so they link together. So thank you, Chair, for taking this report first. What we would have done, had this not been the last year of Waverley, then we would have considered what improvements we needed to make to the local code, but for next year. But of course, that isn't relevant. So unless members think that there is an enormous gap that we should fill, and as officers we don't consider that there is, then we are not intending to do any further work on the local code. But I think it's a helpful framing for you of the annual governance statement, and for members and the public as well, to see where we're getting our sources of assurance from. So I'll stop there, Chair, but I will take any questions.
Thank you. I'm just noting most of this follows the SIPFA and SOLAS guidelines. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
But do members have any questions on this? Otherwise, I would suggest that we approve and adopt it and then move on to the AGS.
Agreed. Yeah. We agree with on those again.
So,
does the council adopt it, or do we?
Sorry?
Does the council adopt it, or do we adopt it, or do we note it? Is it for us to adopt?
We are asked to adopt this. So Deborah,
That's correct, Chair. You are adopting it.
so the whole AGS, the
No.
whole, not just relating
The
to
corporate code of governance.
just that,
Code
yes,
of
yes, so not the whole
governance.
AGS,
That's the next thing.
yes, okay.
So it's in the powers of this committee to approve and adopt this local code of conduct.
Yes, Chair.
Approve, recommend that what we do. Is everyone happy to so approve?
Approve.
Thank you, Deborah. Which then takes us neatly on to item 7 and the annual governance statement for 25-26. So stress those years. Joe, are you going to lead us through that? I know that Candice has in the past, but if you would like to.
Unfortunately, I'm a lesser sub than Candice, but we'll give it a go.
Yeah.
So thank you, Chair. The report before members tonight presents a draft annual governance statement for 25-26. It's a statutory requirement and forms part of an important part of Council's statement of accounts. It explains how the Council has maintained and reviewed the effectiveness of its governance arrangements throughout the year, including its systems of control, risk management, decision making and accountability. The statement has been informed by a range of assurance sources, including annual internal audit opinion provided by SIAP, and the Council's self-assessment against the SIPFA Financial Management Code. The draft AGS acknowledges the positive progress made during the year in strengthening governance arrangements and embedding improvements across the organisation. At the same time, it does recognise there are areas where further work is required and sets out the actions that will continue to be taken during 26-27 to support ongoing improvement. As we move towards LGR, the establishment of West Surrey Council, as we move towards LGR and the establishment of West Surrey Council, maintain a strong and transparent governance framework remains particularly important. Robust governance will help ensure effective decision-making and service delivery during the remainder of Waverley Borough Council's life, whilst also supporting the development of strong governance foundations for the new authority. I would like to place on record my thanks to Councillor Fellows for his support, engagement and valuable input into the development of AGS. His involvement and constructive challenge has helped strengthen the final document presented to the committee. The recommendation for the committee is to approve the draft annual governance statement 25-26 as attached in Appendix 1. Thank you, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Members, any questions for Joe on the draft edges?
Yes.
It's not an actual question, it's just at page 99, it says the committee will consider the whistleblowing policy on the 9th of July. We're just sending that to the 27th.
Thank you.
Well, there's no point in changing it to the future tense.
That's today.
Today. Because it was today.
Right. We are addressing the whistleblowing shortly.
Yes, thank you. So I think there's a conflict, if I understand correctly, between the number of audits referred to in item 7 and the number of audits referred to in item 12. So 18 audits with 2 no assurances versus 12, unless I'm missing which I might be.
What page is that on?
Page 109 versus page 222. I might be misunderstanding it, but that's how I'm reading it.
There does appear to be an anomaly.
Yeah.
One or other is
One is
incorrect.
Yeah.
I don't know. I will look into it and come back to you.
Thank you. And then the second point, please, if I may, was that so given that the housing ombudsman found 8 maladministration findings, including 1 severe, why is the housing service failure not viewed as a significant governance issue?
So, Councillor, could you point us to the page?
Yeah.
Ideally, the page number, the small
will.
page number.
I will find it. That's in my notes. You need 2 minutes to find it, didn't you?
Page 15, I think. It's 105.
Correct, yes, I thought it was wrong. My notes, yes, correct, page 15, thank you. I mean, is that okay? Is that meant to be okay? Is that not a big deal?
I'm just looking at it. I just.
What are you referring to?
So
I've got page 15 here, isn't
eight
your
findings of maladministration, 1 of which was severe and malad.
So I'm trying to find the page.
105.
112, I think. 112.
5 on this one,
Or page.
or 1 council, I think.
No, it's 112 is in the business.
Well, look, page 112.
Yeah, you're the PDF of the different.
Try 105.
Okay, yeah, so it starts at 7, I just add 7 to all the numbers. get the PDF. Yeah.
So that whether it's severe maladministration or just maladministration, it's not our assessment, it's their assessment whether it's severe or maladministration. I don't particularly know the answer to your question, but I can find out. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I had one question which is related to the section other council events in 25-26.
What page is that on?
Which was the old page 10 of the report, page 100 of the old one, and I don't know the current number.
I think Councillor Hyman said it's 7 on.
Add 7 on that. Well, it's more what isn't there. And I noted that, to my mind, there's no reference to the local plan update from the AGS. And I would have thought that would merit some comment, and perhaps a paragraph.
No, I don't know.
No.
No, I don't know. I've never put the local plan because this is about good governance. Never had one with local planning before, but I'll have a look at it.
Right, I mean, if the reason it isn't there is because it's not a governance issue.
Non-compliance is certainly.
Yeah, I just think that
non-compliance is certainly a governance issue.
for the public reading this, one of the council events is that the council is undergoing a review of and an update of its local plan. I don't necessarily think it's a controversial statement, but I think it is something that the public could be aware of. But if you can take that
away, we'll look at it.
Reflect on that. Councillor Hyman.
Thanks. I don't want to labour this, but I did turn up at the last meeting on the 11th of March, and under item 5 on the agenda there was for us to raise issues of concern which should be included in the AGS, and I did so, and they were kindly minuted and put on the list. It's on page 2 of our agenda papers, which is probably about 9 of the PDF or something like that. It's the beginning of the minutes of that meeting, and there was a list of crinkles spelled like chips, the grounds maintenance contract, purchase of 69 High Street, big issues with serious governance issues involved. And purchase of 69 High Street has a serious issue of interpretation of the law in respect of transfer of money between the housing revenue account of land between the housing revenue account, the compensation for transfer of land, and whether or not it should be at intended value, and that certainly has not been looked at and should be investigated, because millions of pounds are at stake for the housing revenue account and for residents. The EPR, which, as you know, is a compensation for a recycling credits, which in effect residents had paid for themselves for the year prior to last, and for last year, and for this year we received grants. This is something which residents have effectively paid through their council taxes, and we are using that money now. As a council, we are using that money for other things. We should have given it back to the residents. We should not have massive surpluses showing over the years and putting up car parking charges and all the rest of it. If we've got money coming in for stuff that residents have paid for, we should be trying to give that money back to them. And that's a serious issue of governance, because it's a matter of how do we treat the people we're serving, whether we're keeping it for ourselves and for whatever, to pay for pensions and whatever. Householder seal is mentioned on page where we were in the AGS. That has been mentioned, but only very vaguely. It certainly doesn't mention the level of risk and the level of interest that remains in it, or how we should be looking at it now, given the statement that has been made by the minister recently, which in effect says that the Waverley was wrong to say that we've got no, we don't have any options here, we have to do this. And the government has confirmed that actually Waverley's position hasn't been entirely true in that case. And this has caused a lot of trouble over years. Some of it going back to 2018, 2019. And that's a serious governance issue. It was the biggest thing on our agenda repeatedly, wasn't it, throughout the year we're looking at, and a serious governance issue.
Councillor, can I just,
and there are three other issues, including habitats compliance, Chairman, if I might just finish, which I've mentioned. And it looks to me that the process here, when we bring these items up and when you as chairman say, yes, those can go into the minutes and we'd like those to be included in the AGS, and they're not, so this is what you've just said, I'm supporting what you just said, Chairman, that the stuff that isn't in the AGS under things we should be looking at. When none of these things, which are very important, and very important to the governance of the new council, which is going to be running things after us. We want to make sure things are straight here and in the other councils. It's not in there, and I can't vote for this. I can't agree with it, Chairman, because it's missing everything that's important. As you've said.
You read your points there. I would point out the minutes that these were raised for consideration, and they were going to be raised and taken to the governance meeting. So,
yes,
Deborah, I'm going to turn it to you if you can respond to some of those points. I would also point out that you made there a number of assertions of fact, which are not necessarily fact and are fact debatable. Also,
well, it is fact we do not have an appropriate assessment of the mitigation, and anyone who wants to counter that, and that's for and it's important and it's got to be covered.
Thank you. Let me turn it over to Deborah.
Just to note, Deborah can't raise her hand. There's a problem with her IT, so she can't raise her hand, and she was trying to answer some of them questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So I could probably help with the question about maladministration initially. So maladministration could be a service failure. It's not necessarily a governance failure. Sometimes it's about the level of service we provide, and we don't write up every service failure in the annual governance statement. The annual governance statement identifies that we have a process to understand whether we've got service failures or maladministration. So that's about showing that we have a process. All the items that were raised by Councillor Hyman were considered by the officer group that looked at the annual governance statement. So I know, as an example, Crinkles or Crankles, I'm not sure which one it is, that was actually in the previous year. So each item that was raised was considered, and clearly Councillor Hyman's position on SIL is not a position that the council has adopted, and therefore the position in the annual governance statement is the council's agreed position. I can't really add anything further. But I'm happy to have a go at any individual questions.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Higgins.
In respect to Councillor Hyman's point about the letter from the minister, it probably does add quite good context. I think it does sort of give a bit of background, but I would disagree with you, Councillor Hyman. I actually think it did confirm that the interpretation of the legislation that Waverley took was correct. It does go further in terms of mixed grass-share payments, but it doesn't materially change the governance. So I wouldn't have any problems with having the minister's letter or details summarised in the letter included.
I hear that, although I will ask the councillor if I believe that letter was in the subsequent year, the 26-27 year, and we are dealing. So I don't know whether that's yeah. But if you can take that away and if
it does, Chairman, sorry to interrupt, but it does go to the attitude and the way that the council was approaching the matter, which was our governance system for that year was based on an interpretation of the law which was slightly overzealous, let's say, according to what the government has now said. So, and that is what the council was being told by a lot of people, including councillors, and the administration an officer was saying, no, you're wrong, to all the people who now actually, the government have confirmed that we were not as wrong as we were being told at the time. This does go to governance. because we weren't given the opportunity to look at the legal interpretations. We had a number of conflicting legal opinions. And I kept asking whether we could interrogate these in some way. And it seems to me, as in the situation that Deborah has just described, where our officers are marking their own homework. You know, I bring up items and say these things need to be looked at. Someone needs to be investigating these. They're matters of governance, so it's our role rather than overview and scrutiny. What we do is give it to the officers to take away, and the officers turn around and say, "Oh, everything's fine." Well, obviously, it's not. When you've had non-compliance with the legal framework regarding habitats and species for all these years, you can't allow people to go on forever. They're never going to admit that they've got it wrong, but someone somewhere has to have oversight of this independently. And I think our system's broken down because we're marking our own homework. Basically, that doesn't work for anyone. It doesn't work in any business. You cannot mark your own homework ultimately because there is no accountability. And what our AGS here in front of us to agree says that we're happy with that. We're perfectly happy with that situation. And I can't agree with that. That's letting down the residents, and we're not being responsible, and we're not standing up for the serious role we have here in this committee to ensure that things are done properly. And,
Thank you, Councillor Hyman.
And so I would just ask others, please. You said it'd be nice to have other things added in. Others said it'd be nice to have other things added in. Well, we're not being asked to do that. We're being asked to agree this as it is. And to me, there's no accountability. It misrepresents the situation in this borough and in this council because things need adding into it.
That would be obviously your opinion. I'm not believe that is the opinion of the committee, but the committee, I think, can decide therefore whether it is happy to approve this draft AGS. I have those who are happy to approve this draft AGS.
Will we have a show of hands? So, if someone is, nobody said they are.
And those who are not. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's approved 3-2.
3-2.
Yes. Thank you. We will move on to
I believe we're number 8 now, Chair.
which is the business continuity update. I'm going to turn over to you on this.
Thank you, Chair.
Somewhat unsung, but an important facet of the
Definitely.
council's governance.
So thank you very much for inviting me here today. And this is something that Ezra has asked us to do to give some assurance in our approach to business continuity in the council. So Waverley Borough Council is Category 1 responder under the Civil Contingencies Act, and that places a number of duties on us. And one of those is that we are responsible and we have to maintain our service provision and our business continuity. An incident can happen at any time, and we had one in Guildford on Friday night where we lost our phone provision in Guildford, and that included the emergency repair phones. So we were able to transfer that phone number to another phone number, and we were able very quickly to implement contingencies that meant that tenants were able to do that. And I know it's a Guildford example, but it hopefully we can do the same in Waverley. We've had a number of examples at Waverley where we've had water outages and we haven't been able to use the building. We've had various IT outages, so they do happen. We have also had run a business continuity exercise with the management team here. So it is something that we do take very seriously, and it is part of our programme of training and exercising. So the report sets out the work that we've done with all the services across the council to draw up their business continuity plans. And what we've asked them to do, and what we work with them to do, is to identify their priority services. And those are the services that the council has to deliver. So what we've done, that has then led us to bring together a priority stack of all the services across the council that we need to focus on in a business continuity incident, and we need to bring back as fast and as quickly as we can. So our approach is to focus on maintaining those services, those priority services. The review of the priority services detailed in the service business continuity plans has allowed us to produce an overarching strategic plan which covers all of those priority services and the dependencies across the organisation. And this is essential for us and for our support services such as IT, so they know what they need to bring back in what order and what is an absolute priority. The Strategic Business Continuity Plan was published on the 19th of June internally and provides a robust approach to business continuity across the organisation. We don't publicise the plan, and that's for very good reasons. And those plans have been used maliciously when when they are published. But what I would recommend that you do, and particularly for portfolio holders, is to speak to your directors and to actually ask them what are their priority services, what are the services that they deliver that must operate. For a way of oversight of the plans and of the process, everything is reviewed by the council's strategic emergency planning group, and that is chaired by Ezra, and the membership includes the relevant assistant directors, and it meets every 12 weeks. The group oversees reviewing the plans. It considers any business continuity events that have taken place at Guildford and Waverley, but also nationwide, and have we taken any learning from those incidents. The committee is asked to note the arrangements that we've used to produce the service business continuity plans and the overarching strategic business continuity plan, and to support the continued work by the services to monitor and update these plans in order to demonstrate the authority's preparedness to a business continuity incident.
Thank you, Helen. Councillors, any questions for Helen?
How do staff access this plan if systems go down?
So, the service business continuity plans are available. Everything is available on SharePoint site, but that has restricted access. But everybody who needs access to either their service plans or to the strategic plan has the relevant access.
So I'm just thinking if there's like a cyber attack or something like that, they can't have access to the internal systems. How would they be able to view that or know what to do?
So that's a very good question. And actually, one of the things that I'm actually in the process of doing at the moment is producing an incident management team kit with copies of relevant plans. But yes, they're on the SharePoint site at the moment. So I would expect service leaders, service directors to have copies of their own service plans. But yeah, we also have there's something called Resilience Direct, which is a government site where we also keep copies of our emergency plans, and that is outside of the council system, so that would still be accessible.
Perfect.
Helen, I've got a question which is perhaps a little unfair, given some of the other attendees here. So I'd ask you to answer as honestly as you can, but with fear of no comeback on that. Well, yeah, what I read here is really good. What to me is important is the buy-in, particularly from senior management, to make sure these types of plans are maintained and understood, whether it's attending the tabletop exercises. Are you happy that you get the sort of senior management time and commitment that you would have?
I can answer that honestly, and I can say yes. And that has mainly been driven by Ezra and by stressing the importance of all of these things. And I think the exercises and the things that we've run have been well attended, haven't they?
If I may just add to that, so we thought that this was a corrective piece of work. We didn't have to do this, but I think we absolutely should. As Helen's outlined, it's a critical responsibility for the council, and it's right that we can assure ourselves that we have a grip on it. We don't just mark our own homework. There's also been an audit of our overall emergency preparedness. And as part of the governance, it's right and proper, it comes to this committee as well to give it oversight. To add to that, as Helen said, we take a dynamic approach, and it's about all levels of the organisation owning this. We regularly have sessions at the joint leadership team with a focus on this at the corporate leadership board as well. And it's got to be a live document. So yeah, it's absolutely taken very seriously, and I think today is a good indication of that level of seriousness it has.
And I think it's really important that we have Ezra's leadership and
well, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, you all have so many pressures on your day jobs. This is like really only becomes important when something has happened.
I think James Beach, who manages IT in Guildford, said something about business continuity isn't important until it is.
Exactly.
And when you're in the middle of an incident, it's fine.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that and for that report. Committee, are you happy? Sorry,
Just
Councillor
two
Bottom.
questions, please. One is, are we saying then that, so how would payments and housing maintenance be delivered if we had a 5-day ICT outage? That's one question. And the second question is, it says on page 141 on my version, there is a risk that some data may not be recovered in the case of an outage. And do we not like have, automated backups? Surely we should have known it.
I think there's probably questions for IT, but I mean, I can take it back to IT.
I think just the general point I'd make on this is about preparing for the worst. So we should absolutely consider all worst case scenarios. Some of those scenarios are unlikely, and they hope that they'll never happen, but we should absolutely consider them and have a plan for them. On those specific questions, I think that's best we come back with a detailed response as well. So there's some operational detail as well that's to keep
Yes.
those.
To add that to the list.
Through you, Chair.
Yes.
When we've had previous reports from IT, they have informed us that there is a cloud backup. There is also backup held at the Memorial Hall as well as at this building.
So then we shouldn't lose any
So we
data.
shouldn't do, no. But as
If I may, this isn't about saying we will, this is about planning for different scenarios. So I think that's an important distinction. So we've got strong plans in place, but it's important we plan for all scenarios. We're not saying we will, it will happen. Let's sincerely hope it won't. It's about planning for the worst.
Councillor Hyman.
Thanks. I would absolutely agree with Helen. Contingency planning is very important. I think actually that it's one of the areas where I've always considered Waverley to have done well. To tried to be on top of. I mean, you'll have a Guildford background, but they're now joined together.
I live in Waverley and I've known the emergency planners at Waverley for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, you really don't know whether you've got big holes and problems with your contingency planning until it happens and you find out, you weren't ready for that bit. So it's, and that's bound to happen. Accidents happen and it's human. But I think we've always done quite well. Although one thing I do have to disagree with is how useful this item's been on the agenda, because I see this and it's got no information in there. It's all to complete, to be, I don't know whether you've seen it, whether you've looked through it. It's all the yellow things saying fill it in. It's a pro forma. I understand why you put a pro forma in there for us, but it's as Councillor Bartholomew didn't know the answer. I would have liked a document that gave us the answers rather than just told us what somebody else might give the answers to somewhere else, which is not much use to us here now, frankly, other than I get an opportunity to say I think we're okay on this, probably compared to others, but then we don't know until it's too late, really. The new bits and we weren't ready for it, then hey, neither was anyone else.
The purpose of including the pro forma was to give you confidence of the information that we were asking services to provide.
Yes.
As I said earlier, we haven't actually included the specific plans because there is information that could be used.
As pro forma, Guildford and Waverley used separately because of separate workplaces, and I mean I understand that obviously.
Some of the services have actually completed combined business continuity plans. Others have kept it separate, but I think it depends on how the various teams work.
I think it would be nice as councillors, and certainly for Councillor Bartholomew too, because over 20 years we've seen a few things like this, haven't we? Come through the committee papers. It would be nice if we were trusted with it. If you would, if they would actually allow you to see it and know what the contingency plans are. But as you say, it's not complete yet. It's or the new version isn't complete. So I take it.
Yeah. So that the strategic plan was completed and was published in June.
So if I may, what this report does quite right is it sets up the process we go through. What role this committee is to give assurance on the process and governance. What it suggests is a bit like with the cybersecurity briefing we did is I think in private session we'd be happy to facilitate a briefing as we did with IT on some of the contents of that plan. But as Helen's explained, there's a very good reason why that hasn't been shared in the public domain, but we're not keeping anything from councillors and we're happy to take that as an action. We can organise it as we did with the IT briefing.
We could have it as like a pink pages at that.
Well, I was just going to say, it would, I think, maybe not every single continuity plan, but I imagine put together all the service plans would be quite a bit, but certainly an example of a completed one that's not necessarily your best one, but a typical example that could be circulated on an exempt basis to us would give us that additional assurance that it's not just a lot of blanks. There's meat in there. So when that's
Happy to stay that way.
Thank you. Councillors, are we happy to note the arrangements set out in this continuity plan, and also thank Helen and her team and Ezra for putting this all together. Thank you very much. Thank you. This takes us now on to, I think, Ezra, you also.
Yeah, shall I introduce this one? Just introduce my colleague Bob Richards, who's introduced himself already, but Richard Stills, joint health and safety manager. So just this evening. So take the report as read, but it's a brief introduction. The council is responsible under the Health and Safety at Work Act and the Control of Asbestos regulations. Which play specific duty to the council in respect to controlling asbestos containing structures and materials that are present within our assets and property portfolio. We're also responsible for compliance with standards set by the Health and Safety Executive. In 2024, the Health and Safety Executive introduced an initiative to assess compliance with these regulations and specific exposure to asbestos containing materials public buildings. Waverley was selected for an inspection, and we went through that process. The report in front of me reports the outcome of that inspection, and the outcome was that we received a notice of confidentiality, the details of which are attached to Appendix 1 in the report. So we wanted to bring that to the Commission and notify them of that outcome. The second thing the report does is set out then our detailed action plan for addressing the issues identified in that notice issued by the Health and Safety Executive. We have a deadline. There was a deadline of the 26th of June, which we've met to demonstrate our compliance, of which the action plan forms part of. And this report provides some of the details of that. So that's brief instruction. We want to bring this report list to this committee, so you have oversight of it and details. And happy to take any questions you've reached online.
Thank you. Two questions for me before I hand it over. Was the inspection just a random selection, or did they have sort of reasons or suspicions that something might be amiss?
No. As far as we know, it's just we're randomly selected, and then the inspector comes in, makes an assessment of what they're going to look at. They agree an approach internally, and then they undertake their inspection.
And the second one, you say that you had the deadline of the 26th of June.
Yeah.
For the council to demonstrate compliance with the notice of confidentiality. Have the HSE acknowledged now that you've demonstrated that compliance, or is it still with them? You obviously think you've complied.
Yeah, so we met the deadline, and this report provides details of what we've done. Richard, do you have anything to add in terms of when we expect to hear back from the Health and Safety Executive, what that part of the process looks like?
No, we weren't given a timescale for a response. It's been a little while now. I suspect we won't be holding on for too much longer. But no, we've not received any feedback as yet.
It's certainly helpful to have their confirmation that they've received it and everything is in order on that. Councillors, any questions on this report? Councillor Barker.
Can I check, why do we term the breaches as minor when the HSE categorises them as material? Is that the same thing, or are we being generous?
Richard, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, legally they are material breaches in health and safety legislation, but they are considered very minor. This is at the very bottom end of the sanctions that the HSE can issue, and so as such we don't receive a fine as such. We just have to pay for the time that the inspector spends with us in person and any communications that they work on.
Do you have any estimation yet of how much this will cost us?
Well, the current fee for intervention stands at £188 per hour. The inspector spent many hours with us, 2 or 3 days, and then obviously would have had some correspondence following the inspection as well. So I think it will be in the low £1,000s, I suspect, by the time we get the bill.
Thank you, Chairman. Asbestos does the rounds every few years through the committee papers, mainly in respect of the Housing Revenue Account, of course, in our housing stock with 4,700 properties. We should, in theory, well, you would think in theory that every tenant, every one of the 4,700 tenants should have a document telling them where the asbestos is in their property, if there is, or whether it is clear. I'm not sure whether any tenants have any such document. I'm not sure whether Waverley has any such document. I'm not sure whether it has. Waverley has repeatedly over the years spent quite a lot of money on asbestos surveys and updated them. And I have no idea whether, as a councillor, I have absolutely no idea how Waverley managed this. I appreciate that this contravention, the notification of the breach, is a snapshot of what they've seen. They've come in, asked questions, and they've found that there are little bits here which don't add up in the paperwork. And things can be minor and material. As in planning, you get minor material amendments, don't you? And non-material amendments, but things can be minor and material. So no problem with that whatsoever. I do think that what they've picked up on have been like details, not updating one thing when you found something else out, not so the records aren't completely full. But I think there's a bigger issue here as members looking at which we are. We want to know what are the risks to the council, if we don't look after asbestos issues properly, don't we? And we want to know that the council's looking after it properly. We need to be able to be quite sure that we can say, yeah, well, actually, all of our tenants know where there's asbestos that they must not touch. They know that they shouldn't. Those properties, they all have been told that they shouldn't drill ceilings. They all know that they shouldn't take those panels off there because they used to cover back boilers, and so they've got asbestos in them. And all of our other corporate buildings, which were built with asbestos roofs and the rest of it, we should know, and it should be fully recorded. And what this tells us is that we're not perfect in that. But what we don't know, as the committee responsible for making sure that we are compliant as far as physically reasonably possible, we have absolutely no idea where else we fail on this. And that's my concern. Because personal experience with no idea whatsoever whether the people who are using these premises on a day-to-day basis know where the asbestos is, if we know where it is. And if there isn't any there, they haven't been told that there isn't any there, so there's no problem. And we should be doing that, I feel. So can we follow that one up, please, and ask what the situation is with our housing properties?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. So on this point, so if you think of the commission is aware, this was an inspection of the council's corporate property. It wasn't of the council's housing stock. So we're bringing this report to the committee's attention. You raise a really important point about how we manage asbestos in other assets within including our housing stock. I think that's a different question, can be answered in different ways. And the opposite team happy to take that away and make sure the committee's got oversight via the other reporting mechanisms to give you assurance that we have the correct processes and arrangements in place for the management of asbestos more widely.
We would assume that was about
Neil. Thank you, Chair. If I may, and it will come up in a report later on the agenda. During the year, internal did undertake a regulatory compliance with asbestos on housing during the course of the year, and we provided an overall reasonable assurance opinion. And I can quite happily share the scope of that review with the committee, if that helps.
That will certainly, I think, be valuable. Although I know you said it's the regulatory compliance. I think some of Councillor Hyman's points probably went beyond what the strict regulations say as to what, in his view, we should be advising residents. Maybe it's slightly broader than that is needed. That's correct.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Yes, well, the issue here with what we call corporate, and to me, corporate means what we own as a council. So I didn't realise actually that this did not include council properties, the council housing properties. I didn't realise that they were treated completely separately. But the issue here, certainly in one of the instances, I think Warmer Hill or whatever, was that the records had not been updated, even though it had been found that there was asbestos there. It was not updated to say whether anything had been done about it, and nobody knew. And then some workers went in there and they did not know whether or not there was asbestos in there. And of course, let's apply that then and say we should have a similar responsibility of safety with our tenants, everybody who lives in one of our properties. Therefore, tenants should know what they should be able to touch and what they shouldn't if there is asbestos in the property. So I don't want to have an assurance from somebody else who didn't ask the right question. I want to know whether or not tenants who have asbestos in their property, how many of our properties have been properly inspected and we know for a fact whether there is asbestos in there? So out of the 4,700, how many of them we know has got asbestos that could be accessed by the tenant, even naughtily, if they went in a loft they've been told not to, right? But people do go into lofts they've been told not to put their a couple of boxes, whatever.
Officers.
How many? How big is the risk? And of those, how many of those people know where that asbestos is and that they mustn't touch it? And where there is no asbestos, do the people know there isn't any, so that they are free to drill the walls and the ceiling?
Yeah, so just to recap, so I clarified that the reporting from the committee reports the outcome of the health and safety executive's inspection of Raven's corporate property. That was an inspection undertaken by the health and safety executive, which did not include housing property, which was their inspection. That Councillor Hyman is asking a very valid set of questions, which we absolutely can provide the answers to. Suggest that's factored into this committee's work programme. Neil's kindly already referenced the internal audit, which is highly relevant to that. But I think that deserves an item in its own right, and we can prepare for that accordingly.
If you can, I think it is an important point. It's also one I would hope that the LSAB has also been following, if not taking the lead on that. But yeah, if you can put that, we can put that onto maybe the next or the subsequent meeting.
I do apologise for labouring it, but obviously as we go into West Surrey, there are things that we need to sort in advance, because you can imagine West Surrey aren't going to want to be involved in any such details any time within the first couple of years of existing. They've got more important things to do, and we just want to make sure we've got our house in order before we pass that over. It's just knowledge. We as councillors have a responsibility of knowing whether we've got things sorted, and I'm sure we have somewhere, or most of it is. Let's
Just press the button.
be sure.
Thank you, councillor, and thank you, officers. Can we then please note the results of this inspection of the corporate properties? So noted.
Absolutely noted.
Thank you. Item 10 is the whistleblowing policy, which was referenced in the AGS. This is a revision of a policy that we have seen both in, I think, most latterly in 2024, but 2019. I'm hoping that members will have read the policy and may not have that many questions on it.
Sorry, Chairman, was a tracked version, because it says at Appendix 1 that there's a tracked changes version, and I had a look through and couldn't see what was tracked apart from some red bits in the actual report itself on page 163 of the original. And I don't think they're red because they've been added or taken away. And then when I look at the whistleblowing policy itself on 165, I can't see any. I don't think I can see anything which has been added or taken away. Which therefore it's not necessarily a track change, or have I missed it? I did read it. And then it says Appendix 1, which is the track change version, but Appendix 1 on page 179 isn't. Appendix 1 is a relevant Waverley Borough Council strategies, policies and procedures note, which is more like a glossary. So Appendix 1 isn't Appendix 1, which is Appendix 1, I want to know. And have we got a track changes? What's changed?
So
am I the only person to be lacking this and everybody else has got this?
I think Deborah's waving, Chair.
Deborah, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Hyman's quite right. I've just looked at this myself and thought, gosh, I can't see the track changes. And I'm afraid occasionally at Waverley, they get taken out by the ModGov system. The policy has been agreed by Guildford. And what I would say to Councillor Hyman and to members is that there's nothing been deleted from the whistleblowing policy. What we've actually done is add to the existing whistleblowing policy. So I've got the Guildford version on the screen in front of me, actually, which has got the track changes in, where I can see that nothing has been altered. Primarily, the changes in this are to include sexual harassment, because the legislation is changing. So if an allegation of sexual harassment is made and it is in the public interest, that then forms a protected disclosure. And the other parts that have changed are the end of section 3 and section 4 have been strengthened. So additional words have been added. So it's the last paragraph of section 3 and the first 2 paragraphs of section 4 have been added, as well as the sexual harassment.
So that's original version, page 169, from complaints of a personal nature down to where they meet the public interest test.
That's correct.
That's the additional text that's been put in, yes?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
And there is additional text to the end of section 7, the last line. Nothing in this policy is intended to prevent an individual from making a protected disclosure or seeking independent advice in relation to a concern. So what we did is we actually looked at the protect, which used to be public concern at work. It's the leading charity, and we took their good practice guidance from them, as we're now a member of Protect, and we've just added some additional words in. But I can certainly ensure that a tracked version is circulated to members, Chair.
I think for future changes like this, having track changes certainly helps. I read the whole thing as it were from the word go, and didn't pick up or we didn't have the track changes. But so it was a well spotted, Councillor Hyman. And yes, if we can have those, that would facilitate our review.
I don't know that we need that now that you've told us exactly what it is. It would be better if the track changes were on the website as a committee paper, but I don't think we need to be sent them, because I'm perfectly satisfied that you're telling me the truth, and that the couple of new bits there, I understand what you put in and why you put them in. My main concern is that you know, as we saw with the post office scandal and with North Staffordshire hospitals and all the other sort of scandals that we get in the public sector, whistleblower policies don't work. It is still very dangerous for people, still get picked on and victimised if they draw attention to somebody else who's a senior in an organisation to their to mistakes or errors that they're making, or things that they are deliberately doing and maybe have been doing for years, because people cannot admit they're wrong and they're not going to change their ways, because to change their ways would be to admit they're wrong. And whistleblowing doesn't work. And I've suffered it myself from when I first became a councillor. I brought up at planning meetings 2 legal matters where the courts subsequently and previously, but also subsequently confirmed that I was absolutely correct in what I said. The officers had denied it and had called me a liar effectively. And the wording that I used was criticised, and I was dragged through the standards board twice for being right and having exposed where the council was not in compliance. And this has continued, and it still continues today, and I haven't had an apology, and I never will. You know, I had this slight against me, and quite often people are told that, oh yes, Councillor Hyman's got 2 standards things against him. Yeah, well, I was right. And there's nothing has happened to the people who have done that, or the people who, and it's an institutional thing. It isn't any individuals here in this room or any individuals in the council. It is institutional. When people take on those roles and become our staff, they have to, to silo systems. We are not allowed to know who is pulling the strings. And to me, it's disgraceful. And whistleblowing policies, what we've got in front of us here, won't work, doesn't work. I am frightened to come here and make criticisms of what the officers say and draw attention. I mean, we're here as councillors to hold the council and show that the council can be held to account, but it can't. I get picked on for it, and I've suffered for it over the years, and I will continue to suffer for it because I keep telling the truth.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. I would say that we do, however, the first step is to have a policy, but the culture to support that policy has got to be there as well.
But the problem is, if you've got a policy chairman, and then you can turn around and you say there isn't a problem
No,
because it's sorted.
I'm comforted by the fact that this would be reported to the chair of this committee and this committee be involved. I think that's extremely important, and I have faith that would happen, and then we would follow it up.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. I will rely on you then. Your faith in our chairman and his abilities to what he will be allowed to do.
Thank you. So can we please adopt this revised?
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Can I check? Have we ever received a monitoring officer report on how many disclosures have been received?
I believe it's in the AGS, and I think there were none last year. Is that correct?
If I could perhaps add to that, Chair, we don't have any whistleblowing disclosures from Waverley Council. We do get them from Guildford Borough Council. We regularly promote whistleblowing at By the Way and across both websites, but culturally it is harder to get people to come forward with whistleblowing at Waverley than it is with Guildford, where at Guildford it's more the case that people come forward with whistleblowing that they should more correctly be addressing with their line managers. So actually, it is more an issue that at Waverley, people feel confident to raise issues with their line managers, so things rarely come forward as whistleblowing.
Okay, thank you. And can I ask, in the policy, what is the safeguard where a disclosure concerns the leader or political leadership?
Could you just tell me what page that is, please?
No, that's an open question. So what is the safeguard?
Sorry. So you can't whistleblow about a councillor because that would be a code of conduct complaint. So a councillor could make a whistleblowing disclosure and say, I think something's going on, but it couldn't be about another councillor because the process for that is not whistleblowing, it is code of conduct complaints. Because as councillors, you do not have the Protection of the Public Interest and Disclosure Act because you're not members of staff or employees or within that category.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Is the committee happy to approve the whistleblowing policy?
Yes.
So approved. Thank you. Now we move finally, not quite finally, but to the data governance, information governance and data transparency report. And if you would like to take both your agenda items, it's agenda 14, is it not?
Yeah, I don't know 11.
11 and 14 in sort of consecutive order.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the annual information governance report for the 2025-26 financial year. To summarise, information governance covers freedom of information, so that the public right to know, right to have access to information within local authorities as well as other public sector organisations. It's all about transparency and not knowing what your taxes are being spent on. It also covers data protection, so the safe and secure handling of other people's personal information. So obviously a major concern in any public authority. And also covers records management and retention and disposal requirements. So to cover summarising the key achievements during the last previous financial year, it was the updating of the council website with the proactive publication of information for the improved public transparency. So we've in order to reduce the number of requests we receive and to make information more widely accessible to the general public, we've added certain sections to the public-facing websites, including information on business rates, public expenditure and contracts, as well as public health funerals. We've, in terms of what we've done internally for staff, we've updated the internal data protection hub on the internal intranet site, so it's providing various items of advice for staff, so including policies and procedures, so data protection policy, records and retention schedules, how long to keep information for, when it should be disposed of, and other guidance documents such as what to do in the event of a data breach if information is compromised or leaked in any way. So we also have the launch of the joint data protection training program initiative for both Waverley and Guildford employees. So the information governance teams at Guildford and Waverley have been a single unit since early 2025. So obviously we've had a much closer collaboration during that time, and with a joint training session we cover both Guildford and Waverley employees, which are both available both electronically via Microsoft Teams as well as physically in the office. And another facet of that increased Guildford Waverley collaboration has been the case of overlapping freedom of information requests, where we often get two different requests from the same individual, so that may be a journalist or an academic who's asked the same request of both Guildford and Waverley, but in the case of a joint service area such as finance or more recently legal or regulatory services, the answer may well be the same for both Guildford and Waverley if it is a combined service. So we're moving on to key performance indicators, so performance stats, starting with SARS, subject access requests, where the public have a right to access personal information on themselves, so which may include information on council tax payments or solicitors on behalf of tenants who want to see the repairs history or tenancy agreements or any internal correspondence with that person's name is mentioned. It can also apply to employees or councillors for that matter who want to see any information about them, whether in internal email correspondence or documents or minutes of meetings, etc. We are the figure for the number of requests answered in time within the statutory time limit, which in the case of SARS is 30 calendar days. So we improved our performance figure from 62% during 2024-25 up to 82% during the previous year. So an improvement of 20%.
Kieran, can I just interrupt you? What's the target?
It starts at 30 calendar days.
So is the target to get 100%? 100%?
Yes, 90% is by the corporate management team.
Sorry.
So in terms of performance figures for freedom of information requests, which is 20 working days, we improved our performance from 76% in 24 to 25, up to 93% during the 25 to 26 year. So again, another significant improvement. So credit to the team there. But as always, there is room for improvement. There's always scope to perfection in terms of getting as close to 100% as possible. So we will always strive to maximum performance as always. So looking forward to focus on improvement work planned to take place during the current years of 2026-27, right up to vesting day, where we Guildford and Waverley are subsumed into the new West Surrey Authority. What we plan to do is to review our existing information asset register, so which is effectively registers of all information held by both councils. So it's whether that's information shared on SharePoint, on the internal intranet sites, or even if it also applies to physical records within paper files, so whether that's stored in locked up cabinets or within archive rooms. We were in the process of documenting every asset we hold. So come the emergence of the new West Surrey Authority, we will know exactly what we have. So we will know what information to retain and what we need to dispose of within the statutory time limit. We're currently in the process of updating our existing the public-facing website as well as the internal intranet, so to make that as transparent as possible, to make it accessible as possible to staff, so that the staff have policies at their fingertips and they have a complete, clear and precise guidance also on what to do, like in terms of how long to keep information for, or what to do if they send an email to the wrong person by mistake, or if they accidentally publish information to the public website which shouldn't be there. If it was someone else's personal information, which may amount to a data breach. We aim to continue to train counsellors and staff in data protection and freedom of information. And that also includes more specialised bespoke training sessions for particular service areas, which is where required. So that's I've been involved in that for areas like HR and planning so far. But for further training on specialised areas isn't always available on demand. Should that particular department require such training? We're reviewing our internal data protection policy, as covered before, and we continue to improve the transparency for local residents. So as much information as possible is available at the fingertips on the website, so they don't have to.
And your team is how many people?
We have myself plus 3 other members of staff, so 4 in total. But we also have members of the legal team who are lawyers, but also they assist us on cases focused on the particular area. Yeah.
With Leanne Guildford.
We have Leanne Guildford, yes.
Thank you very much for that very detailed presentation. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Higgins.
I think it all looks positive to me. There's clearly a culture of reporting incidents and things like that, which is something that I like to see. I think maybe what I was looking for, that was maybe missing, was one eye to the future, or what we're currently dealing with. So are there plans to create policies, or there might already be, but in terms of artificial intelligence, how do you protect data as staff using like
we're in the process of finalising an artificial intelligence policy. It's it's more an IT project rather than my particular area, but I have been involved in the drafting and the consultation process of that particular policy.
So, I was sort of thinking, well, how do you stop sort of open source, sort of like using ChatGPT, how do you have a closed source to make sure that it's done through the right channel? So I'm guessing that's the sort of thing that's going to be looked at in that policy.
Absolutely, yes. So at Guildford, we use a Copilot as our standard staff AI platform. So any other forms of AI, such as ChatGPT, are strictly banned. So there are obviously risks of using non-approved systems.
Excellent.
Particularly when you talk about things like all the types of scams and sort of scammers trying to imitate the members of staff, like has actually, well, in terms of phishing scams, we put scammers impersonating the chief executive and asking for sums of money to be transferred to a certain bank account within a very strict deadline.
We are tested regularly, I can assure you.
We haven't given them.
Yes.
Councillor.
Well, in respect of the SARs and the EIR and freedom of information requests, so it's very good to hear that that the performance has improved so much. And I know it'd be easy to say well, should be doing 100%, but actually sometimes you can't get that information within that time. That's simply it. It's just not physically possible because you're reliant on other people giving you that information, and often you're asked for stuff that actually is not really your responsibility, but you ought to try and answer. And it's even more difficult because you may not really have somebody up, holding the information on your side and wanting to give you it. So I can understand the problems that we have there. I'm a bit worried to hear that you rely on Google Copilot. I asked a question yesterday and the day before Google Copilot. And it told me that I'm the leader of the Farm and Residents Group, that John Rabini is the leader of the Labour Group at Waverley, and Peter Martin is the leader of the Conservative Group. That's what Google Copilot told me.
No, to clarify, it's Microsoft Copilot, not Google. So,
sorry, it is Microsoft. Yeah, but well, it's what comes on Google. It calls itself Copilot.
Yeah, yes,
and half of it's wrong. Some of it's excellent, but half of it's wrong.
Yes, yeah,
because it relies on what other people have put there. So
not quite 100% accurate. Obviously, AI has its flaws. So at that moment, although as technology moves forward, like we do.
As far as Kieran, as far as the data transparency and information going forward, one thing that's driven me. One of the things that drove me mad over the years, if you're wondering why I'm not I am, was because every so often Waverley changes its computer system and its website, and so every document that I've written embedding links to Waverley web pages and documents and things no longer works. And this is done on a regular basis every few years, so that you have to throw away all that you've done, or you have to go through the lot of it. It worries me after LGR, after vesting day. It would be nice if we were still able to refer people to Waverley documents and things, because obviously there's things Waverley have done that may well be, and particularly things which Woking have done and Spelthorpe maybe, let's say. We want to make sure that we are able to access those councils' documents. Obviously, we won't be councillors, except for those who are re-elected. I don't know whether I'm here today. There's been, I don't think so. You're not, are you? No. On West Surrey Council. We won't be able to look at exempt papers, things that went through, over the years. We can't look at those. We can't check what's going on. I think there could be a big gap in information for the new councillors who won't be able to get information from old councillors, and I'm very worried that residents are simply not going to be able to go back to documents and find them. Your job shouldn't exist in a way. In a way, you're trying to make your job redundant by making all the information available online, so people don't have to ask you. You don't need a subject access request. You don't need a EIR and
Councillor, I think we should put in the minutes that the committee noted the importance of the preservation of such records.
Yes, and what are we doing? What are our plans at Waverley? Or do you know? I suppose there is a question at the end of it. What are our plans for information? Because Waverley won't exist, and someone will come around putting signs up on the building that say West Surrey Waverley Division or something, and the Waverley website might disappear. Probably will. It probably ought to by rights. So how are we going to be able to access all these committee papers and everything if we want to go back and look at particularly planning issues, planning applications? How are we going to do that?
Inevitably, there will be requests regarding retrospective information from the former councils when it ceased to exist. So we do plan to have archived any information that still requires retaining past the vesting date. So as you say, areas like planning will certainly require large volumes of documentation to be kept in archives. So that's we are. Planning all in the pipelines as part of the LGR preparations.
But the point is, how are residents and us able to guarantee that we can access it? Sorry, Chairman.
In normal circumstances, I would say that these discussions should be included in your next annual report. But of course, we're not going to be here to receive the next annual report. There will be a new council, but I think that the equivalent of a report on such steps that are being taken to protect the integrity of the data of Waverley would be valuable. And if that's something that you can share by email to the committee, so that we as the council.
I don't think that anyone here can give an assurance on behalf of West Surrey Council that it will continue to make all of the composite councils or whatever you call them, information available. This is a problem that I have. I don't think anyone will control. I can't see West Surrey being accountable.
It's a matter for West Surrey Council. I think what we can do is ensure that Waverley is has put in place the right procedures. If we're sorry, then throw them all out, then I'm not quite sure where we go, but
We were done with.
and that with their audit committee and governance committee.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So we're running on up.
Can we note the contents of this report and then ask Kieran to move on to the actual annual data protection?
And could we note the improvement in performance?
Yeah,
Particularly,
absolutely.
just
Yeah.
note the improvement in performance and note the
Okay.
report.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes, yeah, and have it there's insignificant struts.
Mhm.
Thank you, Kieran.
Okay, so moving on to the data protection report. So we report number of breaches annually, and the figure for the 2024-2025 is 44 breaches. So, but that's we've had a considerable improvement during this year just past 25 to 26, where there were 25 breaches occurred. So I should say that the vast majority of breaches are about a relatively minor nature, and it's mostly emails being sent to the wrong person by mistake. So, for example, if an email being sent to joeblogs1@gmail.com rather than joeblogs2@gmail.com. Easy mistakes to make, but in an ideal world, these wouldn't happen. But we have started to train and educate staff as far as possible to avoid breaches. Like we sent out regularly send out all staff emails, and I've done presentations at by the way, just to emphasize the fact that breaches can easily be prevented if a number of relatively easy precautions that can be taken. In the case of more serious breaches, we sometimes report them to the Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO, which is the independent regulatory watchdog body, which is responsible for the data protection. That they have the power to impose fines, sometimes up to 6 figures in the case of a serious fine. Although in both cases, the ICO had decided that no further action was required. Instead, sent the council some guidance, not advisory guidance notes on how to improve the future, what steps can be taken to avoid breaches. So yeah, so as mentioned in the previous report, there are regular data protection training sessions for staff, and there are regular meetings to educate staff on what they can do to make the handling of personal information, whether that's staff information or information of members of the public, how they can handle that securely and how to send email securely, etc. The dangers of sending attachments by email and to check everything. Also, obviously applies to physical records such as paper records or filing cabinets, particularly when filing cabinets are being disposed of, the charity shop, to always ensure you check the contents before you dispose of it. Yeah, it did actually happen a number of years ago. Not this council, a different council in another part of the country, but where sensitive social work documents were found in a filing cabinet that they sent up to a charity shop. The staff hadn't bothered to check it, so they were fined. I think it's in the region of £150,000 for that. It's expensive fine.
Well, we don't want that.
But as well as the financial penalties, but also we also need to consider reputational damage. So it's not just the money; it's also the content reputation. It also is also at stake. So we do need to.
But residents have to pay that.
Absolutely, yes. That's
for somebody else's stupidity.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just So just to finish off, if I could propose an additional recommendation to I believe that the final audit and risk committee for the testing data is due to take place in March. So I propose to do a wrap-up presentation at that final audit and risk committee to just to cover stats to go up as far as the 1st of March 2027, and a final Waverley information governance presentation to wrap up the end of Waverley Council, so to speak.
Drinks party.
Happy with that on our sort of valedictory meeting. Thank you, Kieran. will the committee please resolve, I'll read it out and full, to note this report and acknowledge the continuing need for awareness and safe handling of personal information, regular training and awareness campaigns. And I think also add our thanks to Kieran and his team for ensuring again that progress is being in the right direction on this matter.
Thank you, Chair.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kieran. Right, we're going back. Neil, you've been very patient then.
Very patient.
But I believe we're going back to item 12. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, Neil, the important internal audit conclusion.
Thank you, Chairman. I will give myself, you just saving the best for last. Very much so. So this paper presents the Chief Conservator's annual conclusion for 25-26. As before, I take the report as read, however, just draw the members' attention to a couple of points, if I may. I appreciate there's a bit of disparity in the page number and depending on which one you've got. So I'll give you the page reference I've got, which is the PDF version, but I'll also give you the reference of our individual report number at the bottom of that. So hopefully that will help. So on page 221 of your packs, or page 6 of our report, that details our overall conclusion for 25-26, stating that in the opinion of the Chief Conservator, from the work that's been undertaken during the course of the year, the framework of governance, risk and control within the council is assessed as reasonable. On page 222 of the pack, page 7 of our report, provides a graphical overview of the spread of assurance opinions concluded throughout the year at an assignment level. And then just on pages 223 through to 225, or pages 8 through to 10, provides a high-level summary of the key observations from those review that we concluded as limited assurance during the course of the year. The details relating to water safety will hopefully come as no surprise to the committee, as they were previously reported as part of our regular progress report. The other limited assurance review relates to our conclusion from the review of tree management, and that review was concluded since our last progress report, so members won't be quite as familiar with that piece of work. Page 230 of your packs, or page 15 of our packs in Annex 1, itemises the individual audit areas reviewed throughout the year and the assurance opinion concluded for each. You'll note just at the bottom of that page that at the time of writing the report, there remain 2 reviews, one in field work and in respect of charitable trust. That has now reached draft stage. So that one and the section 106 are both at draft, and we'll be reporting those through as part of our next progress report to the September committee. So members will see the outcomes of those reviews as part of that. That's probably all I really felt I needed to say. The only thing I'd just like to add is to thank both officers in this committee's contributions and engagement over the course of the year to enable us to bring forward the annual opinion in its current format. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Obviously, you've got the limited assurance on the tree management. But I don't think we've seen that report or had that. Will that be in your September report, or
well, the summary
comments, since we have the officer with us?
Sure. So the summary of our work are reasonably high level, but it kind of picks out the salient points of why we deemed it as limited. Is on page 225 of the packs, or page 10 of our report. So hopefully that provides a high level summary of the issues. But as you say, we've got the resident expert that will kind of add context and possibly a little bit in and around the actions in place and completed to address some of the issues.
Good. So I'm just trying to see what the management actions from from that report are to. So I don't like seeing anything that says limited.
You've got a copy of the report.
Yeah, just. So would you like me to go through each kind of observation and the management response? Would that be useful?
Yeah, it's really, I think that when we see something that's, given the limited
of course,
assurance, and then recommendations to change things, it's what steps have you
of course,
taken to address the timescale that you're envisaging?
Yeah, no problem at all. So I can go through sort of each action individually and give you some idea on where we are with those. If that's
just very briefly.
Yeah, no, of course. So observation number one, which was deemed to be priority one, was overdue remedial tree works jobs. So when my team inspect trees, or myself inspect trees, we identify works in accordance with your duty of care or in relation to being a reasonable landowner. So that could be anything from removing a tree which is inherently dangerous, right the way through to crown raising some low branches. So our grounds maintenance team can pass underneath and some grass, that kind of overall sphere of work. At the time of the audit, we had 461 pieces of work which were overdue, and 212 of those at the time were more than 6 months overdue. I think it's really important to remember that not all of those are risk management items, they are sort of husbandry as well. But the steps we have taken since the report's been made available to us is we've actually reduced all of the actions from 461 to 188, so a significant reduction. And in terms of ones that are more than 6 months overdue, we were at 1. And that's because there's a nesting bird in the tree, and we're not concerned regarding the priority of that at this time. So yeah, a really large reduction of that overall kind of risk factor. But as I stressed, it's not just risk management. We have one system that kind of encompasses everything to do with tree pruning, tree management, and we can't really differentiate between that.
So are these trees that are on Waverley?
Council-owned trees, that's correct.
You are oversight.
Yes.
I'm conscious that in my ward, we recently had a very serious incident with a tree falling down, injury.
Familiar with that, yes. So that tree is on council land, and the council is involved in a separate kind of function.
Okay,
so this is specific, the purpose of this report is to look at trees that the council owns or has responsibility for, and therefore our duty of care around that. So tree risk management, we owe a duty in accordance with the Health and Safety Work Act.
Consequences.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can be severe.
Absolutely. Whilst the risk of being harmed by a tree is extremely low, the consequences are extremely high, potentially. So that's kind of the main point there, and that's the key thing that I think is really important for us to bring forward is the risk reduction immediately from that, and especially anything that's more than 6 months, bar one tree, because the nesting bird has been greatly reduced. Second observation was in relation to the knowledge of the trees that the council is responsible for. So this is in relation to if there was tree management changes, whether we obtain land or whether we dispense of land. So we've already dealt with that matter. So I'm now consulted and notified regarding land ownership changes, whether the council, for rights of eyes or however we dispense of land or indeed take on any land. I'm now consulted by either our property team or legal services, depending on the transaction, if you like. And we've also begun to review risk zones where we have previously identified no trees. The risk is obviously extremely low because in 5 years it's unlikely more trees have grown that present a risk to people and property. However, this is a piece of work that will be undertaken across the rest of the summer to make sure there are no more trees on council land, on land that we have previously identified as having no trees. Some of those sites we have planted trees, so we have now got trees, so we'll capture that information, but unlikely to change. Again, similar to that fashion, so risk zone management, we inspect trees on 3, 4 or 5 year cycles, depending on the occupancy. We undertake, every time we assess those sites, we undertake I would say, we review the appropriateness of that risk zoning in terms of the target and the tree stock. With that in mind, we are now going to start recording that information. So we have a physical audit of demonstrating we have actually done that. Because we do it subjectively, we do it all the time. But just to recall that, to say actually when we're here, when we attend the site, we still deem these risk zones to be appropriate, or indeed we need to make changes, and these are the actions that we've taken. Another observation was made in relation to accuracy of data recorded by the team, essentially. So kind of clerical errors where things have been missed, or things not been missed, but things have been recorded potentially slightly incorrectly. That's just a housekeeping matter. So that's been raised with all users across my team, just at regular intervals to make sure that we are making sure that all of our data is accurate and fit for purpose in terms of is correct. Observation number 5 in relation to the tree and woodland policy and the council's tree risk management framework. You may be aware that the council adopted the tree and woodland policy and action plan in 2022, and it's a living document. At the time of writing by my predecessor, it was deemed to be reviewed, updated on a regular basis, and that being annually. That has not happened. I think it's relatively reasonable to say that's probably a little bit excessive to review that kind of life policy every single year. But regardless, that's the standard that we have set. And in discussions with the team, we're now looking that it's not appropriate to review that prior to LGR because there will obviously be some policy change, some direction change. The actual policy itself is fit for purpose, but we operate a greater service than what is identified in the policy, which is a fair comment to make. But yeah, we're not looking to review that until 2028 now, until the inventory is kind of in full flow. These policies become important in terms of review as from a unitary's perspective. And I think the next point was in relation to performance monitoring. We do not currently have a system of reporting back to these kinds of situations. So a target date for myself is to start looking at how we can start reporting that back to CLB essentially in terms of performance.
Thank you. I hope that gives members a sense of the gives some assurance of the approach that's being taken to remedy the situations. I certainly felt encouraged by some of those maybe just paperwork issues, but you're taking it seriously.
Absolutely.
And addressing that. And that's kind of what we really want to hear, because as you said, it could be very, very unlikely.
Yes.
But there are consequences. So thank you for that. Neil, I sort of interrupted your report, or had you sort of basically come
No, I think I
to the end of it? Did members have any questions for Neil? If not,
sorry, you go ahead, sir.
Can I just check, please? So in terms of the timing of the audit reports, so like 90% of them weren't drafted on time and 100% weren't finalised on time. Has that had an effect on our delivery in year?
No, but it's a very, very fair question. So if I can try and explain, the KPI 2 was a new one that we introduced in around to try and assess the timeliness of our audit reviews from cradle to grave. So from when we get to draft report and when we get to final report. And that's primarily to ensure we're getting the key messages out to the organisation as quickly and as readily as possible. But also to ensure that that's constant source of assurance throughout the year. What we found with these is at the start of each audit review, we will produce the terms of reference and we'll have a date or a target for each stage of the process. The trouble is, throughout that process in the audit field work, until you get to draft, can be around a kind of a 2.5 to 3 month process. By the time you've drafted, done the initial work, you've done the field work, and then you've written up a responsory report, you review to the draft. There can be a number of dependencies and issues that can affect that timeline. Some on our part in respect of if we've been diverted to other priority areas, but also it's very reliant on the engagement of the officers as well, and then providing the information in a timely manner. So if things get delayed, if somebody's off sick, if on leave at an early part of the process, the whole of the rest of the process can be affected. But to put that in context as well, it is a very unforgiving measure, and probably another 50 or so % of the draft reports were probably within a week of that deadline. But obviously we need to reflect the KPI in a true, fair and transparent way. So it didn't hit the target, so we mark it as not complete. I think the solace that you can take as a committee is both through the progress reports during the course of the year and KPI 1, where we've completed at the time of this report 93% of the plan, but now 100% of the plan. That it doesn't really adversely affect, but it's a very fair question.
Thank you.
Councillor Hanson?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Neil, thanks. I take it you don't actually do any investigations as such yourself in your, or can you tell me where you have made investigations recently? Because obviously we raised matters at the audit committee and during council meetings, concerns are raised in respect of risk, in respect of governance. Do you follow those yourself and know about them, or are you looking more simply at the treasury side of whether the correct processes are being followed just through treasury management effectively and financial management? Because obviously I see on some of these pages you've got at the top of page 20 of the action of your audit conclusion. Sign up fully achieve standard honesty and professional courage and standard and there's training and examples of ethical dilemmas and whatever. And anything that were done that would benefit Waverley is not going to benefit us or it during its remaining lifetime. I'm just wondering to what extent, in situations where the council has the legal right to mark its own homework, effectively, to be its own policeman, where there isn't anyone except you, and if you're not doing investigations, then your assurances that you give us in some respects, governance more than processes, because you check the processes, I can see them. But in terms of governance, the assurances really are you summarising marking our own homework to council. Is that right?
Well, it is independent assurance, and we do look to sample. So our audit plan is made up in it's a risk-based plan. So we'll look at the risk registers. We'll have discussions with officers and around key issues for the organisation, but we'll also look at our wider horizon scan because we provide internal audit services to 25 of the local authorities. So we produce a horizon scan, key issues coming up there. So we'll kind of look at those and see how potentially they're affecting this organisation as well for consideration for inclusion in the plan. That plan then goes to the corporate board for approval by senior management, and then it comes to this committee for approval as well. That plan is fluid throughout the year, so it can change, it can react to changing priorities and needs of the organisation, and I'd be amazed if on day one it didn't change, and I'd be worried if it didn't change. I don't think that would show us that we were on top and keeping abreast of things. So for each of those reviews, we'll independently review that area. We'll look at process, policy, procedure, and we'll look to see that that's demonstrated through evidence to provide us the assurance, and then we'll report accordingly. It's certainly wider than just financial. We will look. I think probably tree management is a prime example. We looked at that as a risk area, in that's not with a financial hat on. In respect of investigations per se, we will, but only if commissioned by the organisation. There's not a pot of days within our plan for us to investigate individual areas.
I mean, we've got a bunch of residents at home who expect us as councillors to try and keep on top of. The people at home, they think, oh, the councillors are all corrupt and they're all doing everything for themselves and all the rest of it. And we are here as councillors trying to demonstrate that actually that's not the case. We're doing our best and obviously there are people in any organisation that are looking after themselves and whatever, and we have to try and make sure the organisation takes control of that and ensures that things don't go wrong horribly. We don't want Jack and his team going round doing all the tree work on everybody's private trees just because there might be a risk to Waverley if he doesn't. Do you know what I mean? Someone somewhere is taking charge, and I could ask him. We haven't got time tonight to get into details like that, but obviously, you know, as a council, as a committee, we want to know the risk of us getting sued for a tree falling on someone's head, for instance, and part of that is related to what extent do we take responsibility for trees which are historically on a border and nobody really knows who owns it, and it's sort of grown in a different direction since the line of property ownership was drawn. So it's become Waverley's tree by the fact that it's grown and got bigger, or it's become somebody else's tree by that virtue. Or it's Surrey County Council's, and actually, you know, who knows who owns it? To what extent are we actually spending a load of money on chopping down trees and looking after trees that aren't even our responsibility, just to be safe? Because we have to do things as a council just to be safe. And it's going to cost us money, it's going to cost taxpayer money, because, you know, that's something we have to err on the side of. Actually, we don't want that limb falling down and killing someone, even if it's not ours. We'll do it, public interest. With as far as the information is concerned, you've been helping us, Dom. SIAP have been helping Waverley over many years, and I've seen your work, and I've got no criticism whatsoever of your work. It's just for the benefit of the people at home that we represent. To what extent, when you give an assurance saying this is fine, to what extent can they be happy that actually everything is fine and that you've looked at and answered the questions? And I think probably what we need here, what I'd like to see, is a simpler summary of what assurances you can't give. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the man at home knows, you know, that the question that I asked him, you know, what investigations have you done? If someone's looking at the CIL homeowner CIL issue, you know, has Neil looked at this for himself and said, yeah, Waverley are fine here, they've done absolutely perfectly. And of course, you know, you're not going to say to us, you haven't investigated it. Would you be available? Then they'd say, would you be available to investigate it as an independent person? Is it his role or not? Chairman would say, probably not. I think most people would say, is it your role to investigate things?
Probably just to provide clarity. I think internal audit can only ever give reasonable rather than absolute assurance. So, you know, that's a given. You know, we can't look at everything every minute of the day and every aspect of everything. Unless you want to pay for it, I'm more than happy to try and accommodate. But no, that's the harsh reality of it. We're within a kind of given package of days, and we have to use that days as best we see fit in a risk-based approach. And as I say, that's where the risk-based planning comes into effect. But again, the benefits of the Audit and Risk Committee, the benefit of our ongoing discussions with officers is to highlight those potential risk areas for us to be able to consider against what's already in the plan of does that trump what we've got, hence the movement in the plan over the course of the year.
We've got another report coming from you in September, is it? Or
there is a
progress
regular sort of quarterly report of the audit. I mean, I would just add one thing. I take a lot of comfort that the audit plan and audits are now risk-based. So that the risk register does inform what we look at and what we ask Neil to look at, both in terms of severity, because you're quite right. There are a lot of risks that we have to assume, and there's not much we can do about them. So we have to select the areas that we think are the most significant
and what we can do something about as well, because not much point worrying about things that we can't affect.
And I think probably, Chair, the one other hopeful assurance you can take is we are external to the organisation, so we can report without fear in respect of our findings. You know, clearly we discuss and the reports go through a clearance cycle, but if we feel strong enough that it should stay, then it will stay. And you know, that independence from senior management is can be quite powerful. So,
well, I'd like to thank you, Neil, both for the report and the work you've done over the last year, but it's been very helpful for us and I think for the council overall. And I'd like the committee please to note the annual internal audit conclusion 25-26.
Noted, thank you.
Thank you. I believe that takes us to our last item, which is the standing item where we simply have the a look at our annual work programme and the things that are coming up. This is work in progress, things get added to it. But if there are particular things that members feel should be either accelerated or postponed or added, this is the chance to put that. I mean, I'm conscious, here we are 9:30, that we can have some very heavy agendas, and we only have a limited number of meetings. The one thing I'd like to add in, and Joe, you might wish to chime in on this, the 25-26 interim or accounts, unaudited accounts have now been published. We need to note those. And is that something that can be done in September, or is there an urgency that requires?
No, they can come in September.
So
They won't be audited by that stage, but they can come in, unaudited versions can come in September.
So I think we can make sure that the accounts are on that list. I know that we do have the annual, it's the internal audits, it's the external ones, but clearly any progress on external audit would be important for us to hear.
It will be close, but we won't actually have it by that stage.
Yeah. Any comments, questions on the president?
It's just whether we accommodate Kieran's request to come back in March in relation to the beta.
Yeah.
I'm just noticing in September we've got covert surveillance report. Covert, some people say, don't know the name for covert surveillance report. To my recollection, all we ever get is an officer telling us that there has been no, Waverley hasn't actually conducted any, and there has been none. And if that is the case, yes, if that is the case, can we do away with that item?
I think we need the item, but it can be a very brief item.
Can we ask Deborah? Deborah, can you advise on that?
I think, Chair, I could check the policy and see whether the item actually has to come before the committee or whether we could circulate a briefing note to members outside of the committee if there's been no surveillance.
If that has been done, I would entirely agree with you that dealt with outside. Neil, you had
Chair, just looking at the September items, there's probably a couple there. Just down on the second page, we've got the internal audit conclusion. So that's obviously done this evening. There will be the progress report, but there won't be the strategy and there won't be the charter because they both came in March.
Thank you.
Thank you. Make our life a little easier. Any other business? Hearing none, at 9:30, I shall call this meeting to a close. Thank you to all the officers and members who have stayed for the duration. Much appreciated. Hope you're not too hot and you have safe journeys home. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your forbearance. Next what, 3 minutes on?
Is it?
September, July.
Oh, no, it's less. Yeah, it's 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm an hour away.
You're away.
This, you see how this